Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Clinical Labs Digital Pathology Digital Forum. My name is Madison, and I'll be moderating this discussion, Choosing the Right Platform and Making It Work, a digital pathology case study presented by Techcyte. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during this webinar. To ask a question or leave a comment, simply type your message into the Q&A box located on the side of your screen. You can also download the handouts available under the Resources section on the side of your screen. I'd also like to remind you that this webinar recording will be available on demand shortly after today's presentation. Please watch for an email from today's clinical lab with instructions on how to access the recording once it becomes available. And I'd also like to extend a thank you to our sponsors, Techcyte and Evident, whose support allows today's clinical lab to offer these digital forums free of charge to our readers. With that, I would like to introduce our presenters for this session. Dr. Philip Ferguson is Managing Partner at Northwest Arkansas Pathology Associates, where he leads diagnostic services with expertise in hematopathology, immunohistochemistry, and molecular techniques. He completed a hematopathology fellowship at the UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine, following residency training in anatomic and clinical pathology at UMass and an internal medicine residency at Methodist Hospitals of Dallas. Dr. Ferguson earned his MD from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, where he also earned his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. He is an active member of several professional organizations, including the College of American Pathologists, the United States and Canadian Academy of Pathology, and the American Society of Clinical Pathology. Dr. Tiffany Chen is a leader in digital and computational pathology, holding a medical degree from the Mayo Clinic Alex School of Medicine and a master's in global medicine from USC. She completed her anatomic pathology residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital and an NIH/NCI postdoctoral fellowship in computational pathology at Harvard Medical School and Mass General Brigham. Prior to joining Techcyte, Dr. Chen led digital pathology initiatives at a cancer pharmaceutical company, driving advancements in AI-powered diagnostics. She will be joining us for the question and answer portion of today's session. Dr. Ferguson, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's an honor to help present this webinar and share our perspective as a community private practice on implementing digital pathology, especially within a mid-sized practice organization. In the past, many people have viewed digital pathology implementation as something limited to a very large institution or organizations that can deploy at significant scale. Our experience as a smaller organization has been very positive, and it is a privilege to share our story today. I hope it gives others in a similar position useful insights into what to expect. Before we begin, I'd like to ask a couple of questions to understand where today's participants stand on digital pathology. The first poll question is, how important do you think digital pathology is for recruiting and retaining pathologists? Your options are A, minimal to no impact, B, some impact, C, neutral, no real positive or negative impact, D, positive impact, and E, significant positive impact. I'll pause for a moment to give you time to respond. The second question is, at what point do you think a digital pathology platform with AI capabilities will become an absolute necessity for pathology laboratories? The options here are A, within 1 to 2 years, B, within 3 to 5 years, C, more than 5 years, and D, never. We'll pause again for a few seconds to give everyone a chance to respond. To begin, it is helpful to understand who we are as an organization so you can relate today's discussion to your own setting, where our experiences align and where key differences might affect your decision-making process. We're a 13 pathologist organization, a private practice, and a pathologist-owned group. We operate a large centralized core laboratory that serves multiple hospital systems and institutions across a broad geographic area. We're based in Northwest Arkansas, and our service territory extends into eastern Oklahoma and north central Arkansas. Our couriers travel as far as 1.5 to 2 hours one way. Our annual volume is approximately 60,000 surgical cases, and we process about 25,000 Gen Pap smears each year. We use LegoLab as our laboratory information system, and we maintain two-way integrations with multiple institutions and EMR platforms, including Epic, Meditech, Cerner, and other less known systems. The question many of you are probably here to have answered is, why digital and why now? For us as an organization, the decision-making process was really two-pronged. The immediate use case was access to additional pathologist support through remote digital sign-out. Our long-term use case involves AI integration and support. We know much of that AI functionality is not yet fully developed or commercially available, but we believe it is quickly coming. We see that long-term use case as a positive in several ways. First, as a competitive advantage, allowing us to demonstrate to clients that we are on the leading edge and reducing the risk of competitors claiming greater capabilities. Second, as a pathway to improve quality and greater workload efficiency. And third, is a way to make our practice more attractive to pathologists coming out of training. Secondly, we think AI integration in digital pathology is going to lead to increased quality and workload efficiency. We'll probably touch on this a little bit later in the discussion today. And finally, we believe that having a fully digital platform will be more attractive to pathologist recruits coming out of training. With regard to the first use case described on the previous slide, the next point really captures the heart of our decision-making process. The graphic referenced here can be found on the Pathology Outlines website in the jobs posting section. Many of you are probably familiar with it, as it is one of the leading job posting sites for pathologists. The graph shows that even before COVID-19, there was a modest but steadily increasing number of openings with a semi-annual cyclical pattern. During COVID, however, there was a sharp shift. And the key takeaway from the post-pandemic data is that we never returned to the pre-COVID baseline. In fact, it is estimated that between 1/4 and 1/3 of practicing pathologists have retired since COVID-19. I would also argue that if you extrapolate the pre-COVID trend line, it was heading toward where we are today anyway. COVID-19 accelerated this process, but it did not create it. From both a recruitment standpoint and a long-term AI perspective, our assessment as an organization is that the workload per pathologist will continue to increase over time because of an aging population, while the supply of pathologists is unlikely to improve significantly in the short to medium term. That means our solution must involve technology that helps pathologists work more efficiently while maintaining or improving quality. As mentioned earlier, we believe digital pathology can strengthen our recruiting efforts. Initially, we were not sure whether we wanted to outsource to a third party that could provide a platform for remote sign-out rather than fully committing to an in-house digital system. We found that this type of outsourcing was feasible, but relatively expensive. As we evaluated how much additional effort it would take to move beyond that limited launch and implement a full in-house digital pathology system, we realized the lift was not dramatically greater. Because our medium to long-term goals around AI implementation, workload efficiency, and recruiting remained unchanged, we decided to accelerate our timeline, moving ahead roughly 2 to 3 years earlier than we had originally anticipated. Last October, we connected with many vendors at the Digital Pathology Association meeting in San Diego. We interviewed vendors, explored their capabilities, and worked to understand what each could provide us. From that process, we were released an RFP with responses due a couple of weeks later in mid-October. We then moved into a series of online demonstrations with different software vendors during the latter part of October. After that, approximately 7 to 8 vendors came on site to set up sandbox environments within our practice. Each vendor had a day to meet with our pathologists and walk through the software in detail. A group of 8 pathologists evaluated all of the systems independently, and blinded to cost structure, they ranked the platforms based on their individual experiences. This process was finalized by mid-November, and Techcyte emerged as a winner, unanimously actually among all of the evaluating pathologists. From the scanner standpoint, we selected Hamamatsu scanners, specifically the S20 models, because they provided the best balance of throughput, cost, and image quality for our needs. Implementation began in the first half of December with hardware connectivity between Hamamatsu and Techcyte. That was followed by LIS integration in the first half of January. We also began system validation as soon as the scanners were connected to the IMS software. Because validation did not require full LIS integration to complete most of the work, those two efforts were able to run in parallel through January and February. We completed validation in time for a March 1 go-live date, and the launch was successful. One of the most important lessons we learned during the selection process is that you have to understand where a software company is going, its roadmap and long-term plans, not just where it is today. If I were to use the iPhone analogy, digital pathology right now is probably on iPhone version 5. And if you think about, back when iPhones first came out, everybody was waiting in anticipation of the next release because there's going to be so much change to the device and its capabilities. Whereas now, we're on iPhone 17, like the changes between the phone is very small. So there's a lot of space left for development to occur in the digital pathology space before we reach a steady state. So part of that process involves understanding where the company comes from. IMS companies come from a variety of backgrounds. Some originate in radiology with strong emphasis on PACS systems and cross-department hospital integration. Others come from an education background, while some, like Techcyte, come from the clinical laboratory space. Companies may also have very different priorities. On the surface, 5 platforms may look similar, and the image display may not appear dramatically different. But behind the scenes, their strategic priorities can vary widely. Some may be focused on pharmaceutical research and companion diagnostics. Others may prioritize hospital system integration, especially companies with a radiology background. Some may be pursuing vertical integration that spans histology lab equipment through digital pathology. Others may focus heavily on AI development and integration. That AI strategy can differ as well. Some companies are trying to build their own in-house AI solutions, while others are positioning themselves as open platforms that allow multiple vendors to deploy tools within their ecosystem. Finally, funding matters. This field is still very much in a growth and development phase, and companies differ significantly in their financial backing. Just as important, the way a company allocates its resources will reflect its priorities, which may or may not align with the priorities of your pathology organization. Our overall conclusion was that it is essential to understand each company's background, motivations, and strategic priorities, and to determine whether they were aligned with our own goals as a pathology practice. For us, it was a high priority to choose an IMS vendor that was both well-funded and guided by a roadmap that matched our organization's priorities. So why Techcyte? The Techcyte platform is pathology-centric. and they place a very high priority on details that matter in the day-to-day sign-out, especially fast, smooth image rendering. In our experience, their platform provided the closest approximation to reviewing a conventional glass slide. The company's roots are in the clinical laboratory with significant experience in Europe developing both digital pathology and digital cytology platforms. The company also prioritizes an open platform that is agnostic to scanner vendors, LIS systems, and EMR systems. A few additional features also help set Techcyte apart. As I mentioned on the previous slide, the image viewing experience was very fast and smooth. The user interface was intuitive and did not require a significant learning curve for basic tasks, while still offering robust functionality and customization. One unique capability that Techcyte brought, and one that we had really not considered during the RFP process, was its FHIR-based interface. That's FHIR. In essence, this creates a unidirectional connection from the hospital or practice EMR system that can match specimen location data within the medical record number coming out of our pathology LIS. The Techcyte platform, can then retrieve the patient's chart information from the EMR and display it alongside the digital slides in the IMS. For us, this was a powerful differentiator because it addressed a very real inefficiency: the time spent hunting down patient chart information. Finally, we place a high value on relationships. We want to know the people we work with and feel confident that we can reach them whenever we have a problem, suggestion, or other issue related to the software. More broadly, throughout the RFP process, we met many highly knowledgeable, thoughtful people across the digital pathology space, and we built valuable relationships even with vendors we did not ultimately select. Ultimately, we felt Techcyte offered the best overall balance of the priorities we were looking for in an IMS vendor. At least in the near to medium term, we see ourselves as a hybrid organization. And by hybrid, I mean that most of our work will still be done on glass, but selected aspects of our practice will be digitized. Right now, we're starting with 1 to 2 FTEs of daily work for primary diagnosis, with a capacity to have up to 3 pathologists working offsite on any given day. We also expect to fully digitize certain workflows within our organization. For example, we plan to scan all breast biopsies, GI biopsies, and all afternoon IHC stains for digital review. We will also begin using AI in selective situations. Our first evaluation, which is currently underway, involves using the Lumea biopsy chip workflow for prostate needle biopsies in combination with area matrix prostate AI algorithms, with possible future application to radical prostatectomy specimens as well. As everyone here would expect and understands, there is currently no direct reimbursement for AI or digital pathology. Because of that, we plan to measure return on investment in terms of quality improvement and pathologist efficiency, and we intend to gather quantitative data to assess those gains. So what have we learned through this process? First, we learned that digital pathology is a powerful recruiting tool. We have seen increased interest from residents as well as from remote subspecialists who may want to work with us on selected specimen types such as breast cases. It's also made us more attractive to locum pathologists who may value flexibility of combining on-site work with remote sign-out work or just purely remote sign-out work. In addition, digital pathology is giving our full-time on-site pathologists more creative ways to work remotely when appropriate, including around vacation scheduling. Just as importantly, we went into this process believing that AI was the long-term play, and we came out feeling exactly the same way. If you do not have a digital platform, you will not be able to participate meaningfully in the AI space. We also see AI as potentially helpful for workload efficiency, case distribution, internal consultation, outreach to experts at tertiary centers, outside consultations, and tumor conferences. More broadly, it gives us another way to demonstrate to our clinical colleagues how we are leveraging technology to strengthen the work we provide. From a cost standpoint, we learned that the per scan cost of digital pathology is now quite competitive, especially compared to where it was 2 or 3 years ago. What surprised us more was the ongoing hardware cost. When you combine the scanner capital expense with the service contract and divide that over a per slide basis, the cost is more significant than we initially expected. For our organization, where we want to scan slides within roughly a 5-hour morning window, one scanner can support about 1.5 pathologist FTEs of work. So if we want to support 3 remote pathologists or digitize 3 pathologist workloads on any given day, we would need 2 scanners. While we can currently manage that scanning volume with our existing slide distribution staff, scaling toward full implementation would clearly require additional technical support, and that must be factored into the financial model for any organization. That concludes this presentation on implementing digital pathology in a mid-sized private practice organization. At this point, we'll move into the question and answer portion, and I'd be happy to hear comments or questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. At this time, we'll move into our question and answer session. If you joined us late, you can still submit your questions or comments by typing them into the Q&A box located on the side of your screen. Dr. Ferguson and Dr. Chen, whenever you're ready.
Hi, so first of all, I need to explain that Dr. Chen just had to step out for an emergency, so I'm stepping in for her. My name is Troy Bankhead. I'm the director of Techcyte Europe, and I'm the VP of marketing for the group. So my apologies that she wasn't able to join us for today, but I'm sure that in any case, Dr. Ferguson will be able to answer the questions. We do have some that are coming through. John has asked, was there a particular moment or specific feature that made the decision clear for you?
I think for us as an organization, as we mentioned in the talk, we had a 2 to 3 year roadmap plan for anticipation of implementation of digital pathology. And it was really when we realized that we could recruit pathologists to do primary diagnostics that we could not otherwise have on site, that we realized that we had to have the platform. And so that's really what accelerated the timeline for us to pull the trigger on that, because we had a recruit who was going to come in about a year and a half, who was willing to work full-time remote for us sooner. And so because their spouse had military obligation. And so that was kind of the factor that the domino that created all the dominoes to begin to fall. And so we were, and from that, we were really surprised that even before we had it validated and launched, as people learned that we're in the process of doing that, people were reaching out to us with interest in doing work for us. So we're very pleased by that.
Thanks. David is asking, if you could do one thing differently during rollout, what would it have been, or what would it be?
I would say that because of the timeline, we had a GI pathologist who we loved, and unfortunately, family circumstances, they had to leave on a relatively short notice, which put us in a little bit of a pickle that we needed to really get the system up and going to get that additional FTE support. And so we were on a very short timeline. We turned this thing around in 3 months. My recommendation for implementation in practically would be to lot between 6 and 9 months from the end of the RFP process to implementation.
Thanks. I've got a question from Pascal, who asks, did you consider outsourcing the scanning of your slides to avoid large capital investment. Oh, actually, he's got 2 questions, so we'll address the first.
Okay. Yeah. So with regards to, so at the beginning, I kind of indicated that that there are some vendors out there who provide like turnkey service. Like they'll come and like you can send them the slides, or they'll set up a scanner in your office or practice, and they'll even connect you with pathologist support. And some of these models revolve around small practices, people who need vacation or subspecialty consultation, things like that. And so we weren't sure if that was, just for like kind of limited use, like we need a FTE support. We had that person identified. If that model would work the best for us and be the easiest. And so it was, and that's kind of like, that's kind of like a lease. You're going to lease a car or something like that. So your cost per slide is going to be higher. But we still knew that long term, 2 to 3+ years down the road, we're going to be in the digital space. And so when we considered just the additional effort and investment just to go ahead and bite the bullet on the front end and invest in the capital and all of that, that we realized that the cost really wasn't that much more, and actually probably the inflection point of that cost was really quite short within a couple 2.5 years.
Thanks. And the second part of Pascal's question was, what's your biggest break to grow in digital pathology space?
Our biggest break to grow, I guess what he's asking is like, hey, what's keeping you from being a hybrid practice to scaling all the way up? And so I guess with regards to that, one is there's uptake on the pathologists within the organization, how willing they are to adopt and adapt to a new system. There are some, I know of one very large pathology organization that just like flipped the switch over a weekend. We're looking at a more measured approach to it, and doing it in a stepwise manner. There are significant costs to scale to that size, particularly with regards to the scanner cost, and we found that the service agreements, particularly among capital hardware, can be significant. Not insignificant. And so when you divide that out on a per slide basis, you really have to factor that in, and then also the space of which your pathologists are operating in, and then balancing for us as an organization is balancing like, okay, what's our courier expense and things like that, and if we went a higher proportion digital, would that help? The other factor is cytopathology, and doing digital cytopathology, and how you have medical cytology cases and things like that, which are going to be affected in how you validate capabilities and things like that. I do think that solutions are in process and are coming in the not too distant future that's going to bring powerful effects to the cytopathology space. I think Techcyte is an organization that is certainly invested a lot in that. And if you look at what they're doing in Europe with regard to that, I think that they are going to become a significant player in that space in the coming years. But all those things lead us at this point to think that, a higher level implementation, when I say that, I mean like 50% or more, is probably a number of years off. And we're going to have to see some more maturation from the AI end, also the hardware end, and the scan, the actual hardware scanning costs and things like that, to become a little more efficient for us, because we're measuring the ROI of this in every aspect that we use it, and we make a very measured and deliberate decision on each step that we progress in that process.
Thanks. Yeah, we've got a lot of great questions coming in. And just to touch on the cytology, we actually in Europe, you mentioned that we've got several installations of high volume cervical cytology labs using our system, which ties in the biopsies with the with our tool, which is called SureView. So Pooja asks, what are the ongoing costs of using digital pathology? Can you help us understand a bit of the process?
Yeah, so I think of these as costs that are within our organization and then costs that are outside the organization. So costs that are outside the organization obviously is going to be like hardware costs. So basically your scanner system, your IMS cost, which is your information management system. That's what Techcyte is. And then you have memory, your cloud storage cost. And so those are kind of the three components. Oftentimes the cloud storage cost will be bundled or a pass-through cost with your IMS software. They tend to, most companies will kind of package that, or maybe even give you some choice who you use. And then the scanner cost, is typically going to be up to the customer who they pick to go with. Internally, the cost within our organization basically revolves around additional FTE support to scan the slides, and we have two individuals who operate the slide send out component, who are distributing all the slides, and for basically up to about 20% of our pathologists to be digitized. They're able to handle that as part of their daily load. But if we went above that, we would certainly have to begin to add FTE support just to do the scanning part. And our goal is to get all the slides out to pathologists within a 5-hour window, starting between 5 and 6 a.m. in the morning.
Wow, thanks. And just to continue briefly, Brian had asked, what's your strategy for the image storage? What factors went into that decision?
So for the image storage, our strategy is we keep stuff in what's called hot storage, which is immediately available for 3 months. And then after 3 months, we're going to roll those scanned slides into cold storage, which has a much lower cost. And we're going to monitor that for probably a couple of years. We'll accumulate all those digitized slides. We know that there may be the opportunity to work with third-party vendors and things in developing AI algorithms, and having access to digitized images that are already in storage could be a factor in that. If we find that that's not going to be a big factor, after a couple of years, we may stop, start dropping stuff out of cold storage. But the cost is honestly so low for cold storage. It'd probably be 2 to 3 years before it would become a measurable factor that we would actually probably consider limiting that aspect.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Brian. Jessica asks, how long did it take Techcyte to integrate with your LIS?
That's an excellent question, and this is a really good point that I don't think I made in the presentation. So Techcyte was awesome, and we told people on the front end of the RFP, like, look, we have a hard deadline go live of March 1, and if you are not able to commit to give the support, don't even bother participating. So they were super great. We did the hardware integration in December, and then we did the software integration in January. Probably the key factor for somebody implementing digital pathology, whoever your vendor is, I'd say I felt pretty comfortable from multiple vendors that they're gonna provide the people support and stuff to get this thing going. But it's making sure that you have the engineer time blocked on your LIS vendor side that often will become the rate limiting step. So even though we're making deals between scanner companies, IMS software companies, and cloud storage things and whatnot, it's the technical support from your LIS vendor working with the IMS software vendor is going to be a critical factor. And so if there's one place for this whole thing to kind of go wrong and get drawn out, it's going to be that you can't get engineering support time from your LIS vendor. And so you need to, my recommendation for anybody is to immediately, when you're thinking about digital, immediately engage with your LIS vendor so that they are in the loop from the beginning.
Very good. Thanks. Bruce actually asked two questions. I'll just ask them both and let you answer them. His first question was regarding scanner integration. How do you weigh IMS and scatter compatibility? And the second one was, what did the IT buy-in look like, and how did Techcyte work with your IT system? So scanner integration, how do you weigh IMS and scanner compatibility first?
Yeah, so I would say that most vendors, in our experience, were fairly agnostic to the scanner vendor. I think probably the most important question to or most important questions to assess in the scanner space is, are you happy with the quality of the output of the scanner? Talk to people who use the scanner and find out, does it do a good job? Do most of the slides come out in focus? Does it require a lot of hand holding? Because that's going to be the big factor on the scanner side, is how much hand holding does your support staff in your organization have to do with the scanner to get a batch of slides through, and how easy is that to operate? The second issue is, does the scanner output DICOM? I think DICOM is going to become the standard across the board in fairly short order. Hamamatsu, for example, outputs nanozoomer files, and so we have a DICOM software conversion software that sits on the computer. So as soon as it outputs the nanozoomer file, it converts it to DICOM. That process has worked well. We haven't had any significant issues with that. But just know on the front end that you're probably going to need to have a DICOM output. And then those files just get dumped into a folder somewhere on your server. And then your IMS system, whoever it is going to come in and pluck those files and then integrate them into their system. You just need to make sure to understand how you're going to connect the scan slides with like the slide label and stuff like that. The Techcyte has a method, or your IMS vendor has a method to connect the slide with your LIS system when you develop that integration with your LIS system, so they can put the slides with the case that's coming out of the LIS system, which we have a fairly, we use LegoLab. It has a fairly unique, I'd say a more complicated integration from that aspect, and the Techcyte people were able to handle that process pretty easily, and it was not a big deal.
Troy, we're not able to hear you.
I see a question coming through that asks, who paid for the equipment, the group or the hospital? How was the hospital convinced to make the argument? So for us, we're a private organization, so we paid for the equipment ourselves. We made the decision to make a significant capital investment from that standpoint. Our ROI calculation was a little bit easier in that for us, it was, we're gaining access to pathologists FTE, and we were short staffed. So that was not a hard lift to convince the other pathologists. If we make this investment, we get more pathologists pretty quick, because I think we all know that the recruitment turnaround time is measured in 1, 2, sometimes more years to recruit a pathologist. So being able to have a digital platform brought a full FTE much quicker. So if you're in a hospital-based system, where you're an employee of that system, it's going to be the convincing administration to make the investment is going to be a different different equation for sure, and certainly a different strategy. I would say, the questions come up to me in other spaces where you have significantly smaller organizations. And I think that people may get a little bit scared off from the hardware commitment and cost. But even on that side, you could implement a limited digital pathology system, even if you said, hey, I got a small use case, we're an organization, 3-4 pathologists. You could still you could still launch a digital system. When I was talking to one person, I was like, you could even go and buy a small scanner from a company like Grundium, who makes a 4 or 5 slide scanner. But we're talking capital investment in the $50,000 range of scanner cost, and implement bring in an IMS and set it up and say, hey, I'm going to use this for AI or for prostate needle biopsies or whatever, or other, or consultations, conferences, and things like that. And because many organizations or many IMS vendors are going to base their cost on a per slide basis, your actual ongoing costs can be relatively low. And so one difference that we really noticed between our perception and reality, so to speak, of going in, is that we initially thought that, to go digital, we needed to be doing 100,000 cases a year to make financial sense, all of this. And really, in the last year or two, the costs have come down. Billing on a per slide basis is fairly standard. And so what that allows is it allows small organizations to implement digital on truly a cost per slide basis in a fairly linear fashion, without what I would consider just an obscene upfront capital investment. So even if you start with a small scanner, like a Grundium or something like that, you can get into the digital game without having really high ongoing recurring costs. That may be the way for many smaller organizations to kind of get their feet wet in limited use, or kind of this hybrid model of utilizing digital pathology. And then I think every organization is a little bit different. And then you kind of figure out, hey, this is where it really works for us, and we can expand and grow from that footprint. So that's another big takeaway, was that digital is very scalable.
Thanks. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We've got just about time for one more question. We've got several questions in the queue. We will answer all the questions after the webinar. But for our last question, we've got a question from Mark that says, it was stated that 1.5 pathologists should be paced with 1 scanner. Is there also a metric for the number of technical staff operating the scanners?
Great question, Mark. I can just tell you our empiric experience. And so that 1.5 scanner per, or say, actually, 1 scanner can support about 1.5 pathologists. And so we can do about 2 pathologists worth of work each. I'm sorry, 3 pathologists worth of work each day with 2 scanners. And short turnaround time is a big priority. And so our cases are coming out from the previous day early in the morning. So we want to get all of our slides out to pathologists by about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, which means that we have about a 5-hour window that we want to get glass distributed or slide scanned into the system. So we base that metric. So we went with Hamamatsu S20 scanners, which have a smaller capacity but a high throughput, so that we could have a higher hourly throughput of scanned slides. And I would say that that's to run 2 scanners is is probably half to 2/3 of an FTE of work on a daily basis. We have 2 people who do slide distribution, so we were able to absorb that into our existing overhead. But if we were to like scale up, and have a higher level of implementation of digital, we would definitely have to add FTE support there. If organizations, don't have that, tight window of throughput capabilities, they may be able to buy a 300 slide capacity scanner, rack it up and push go and walk away, and it'd be scanning. Or maybe you have slides coming out in the afternoon, they're not going to be read till the next morning. Well, those could be scanned overnight. So not every situation, practice situation, is going to be the same. And so you certainly have to take that factor into consideration in deciding what hardware you want to go with. But for us, that was kind of how our use case worked out.
Wonderful. Thanks. Jessica, Mohammed, Brian, Bruce, we've got your questions. We'll make sure and get back to you as well as the others. But for right now, I believe our time is up. So I will turn the mic over once again to Laura. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for an excellent presentation. This brings us to the end of this session. As a reminder, this webinar will be available on demand shortly after today's presentation. Please watch your email for a message from today's clinical lab once the recording is available. On behalf of today's clinical lab, I'd like to thank Dr. Philip Ferguson and the entire team at Techcyte for their time and effort that they put into this presentation. I'd also like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Techcyte and Evident. Their support allows today's clinical lab to keep these digital forums free of charge for our readers. For more expert insights into the latest tools and technologies for the clinical laboratory, please visit clinicallab.com. Don't go far. Join us for our next session beginning shortly. Inside 3 Digital Pathology Transitions, What Works and What Slows You Down, with Aaron Lucas. Thank you so much for being a part of today's Clinical Lab's Digital Pathology Digital Forum. We hope to see you again soon.